So my disclaimer is usually that these are my personal experiences with Plexus. I've been in law enforcement for about 28 years now, and I've always had problems with my upper back, with knots in my upper back, and was continually going to chiropractors, doctors, acupuncture, acupressure, anything you can think of. And they would get to where if I turn, you could actually kind of see the knots in the mirror. They get so big. And so in August of just 2013, I went to the doctor for about the 20th time for my back was tightening up, and I would be driving down the road, and all I would do was take my hands from the side of the wheel to the top of the wheel, and that would just be enough where I could just feel it knot up, and then the migraine would travel right up the back of my head. So I went back to the doctor, and he said, well, we've seen you so many times for this. Let's pull some blood and rule out some forms of arthritis. And so I'm like, yeah, whatever, you know. So they pull blood from me, and he does it for all you medical people. I guess that's what they call stat, when you actually sit there and wait for the results. So I'm in his office, and he's showing me all these cheesy stretches. Like when you're sitting at your desk at work, go like this. And I'm like, okay, I've had this knot for 12 years, and that's not going to help it. So we're doing all this stuff in his office, and the nurse comes in and hands him my lab results. This is not a good thing. So if this ever happens to you, this is not a good thing. So the doctor looks at the lab results, and he looks at the nurse, and he goes, these aren't his. And the nurse goes, oh yeah, they are. And he looks at me and he goes, have a seat. So I'm like, this isn't good. So I sit down and he says, what do you know about diabetes? And I said, well, I'm either diabetic or pre-diabetic, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. And so he says, well, let me give you the quick rundown. And of course these things vary, and some of you that might be dealing with diabetes will know that the numbers vary, but he says basically when your blood sugar hits 180, we diagnose you with diabetes. If you're not taking care of yourself, it can run up around 220, 230. If you ate a couple donuts right before you come in and we draw your blood, it might even get up around 300. He said by the time you hit 400, you're fighting a diabetic coma, or you're acting intoxicated, confused, things like that. He says the last guy that was in my office that left in a stretcher was 410. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, you're 597. And I go, that's impossible. Because I'd actually, about 2 hours before I went to the doctor, I went on a 2-mile walk with my daughter. So I'm like, that's impossible. I feel great. So I go back in, they re-pull it, and I'm like 593 or something, you know, around. My A1C was 13.4, I think it was. And my wife was with me, and he actually told her, he goes, I don't know how he's even able to have a conversation with me. So, long story short, as far as how I think I got it, probably genetic from my dad's side, because I was diagnosed at 47 years old. And I don't have a lot of communications with my brother, who's 3 years older than me. But when I got diagnosed, I'm like, I better warn him. So I called my brother and I said, hey, last week I got diagnosed with diabetes. And he goes, oh, I've had it for 3 years. So we were both diagnosed at 47 years old. But with all the eating, my little anti-soda pop campaign, I probably got diabetes from soda pop. Because about the only really bad thing in my diet was I was up to about 100 ounces of regular Pepsi a day. I would get a 44-ounce Pepsi on my way to work, and I would get a 44-ounce Pepsi on my way home. And there were times when if I ran out at work, I'd run down to the gas station or something and grab one in the middle of the day. So it's kind of an anti-plug for your sugary soda pops for anybody that drinks those. So that brings me to, I had diabetes, scared the living daylights out of me. I almost said something else, like saw the camera. Scared the living daylights out of me, so I immediately cut soda pop. I immediately even cut carbs, although I eat carbs now. I don't believe in cutting carbs, but I wanted to drop it as quick as I can, or as I could. So what happened was I dropped it so fast that my body went into basically like detox, which my doctor had never seen before. We ended up dealing with a specialist out of Spokane, Washington, who'd only seen me and one other person in his career do this. But my body went into a detox, which is no different than a drug or alcohol detox. And from the waist down, every muscle in my legs started cramping and cinching down, trying to squeeze all that glucose out. And for 9 days, I literally lost full use of my legs, which is really scary when you keep calling the doctor every day, and he's like, oh, it'll pass, and I'm literally dragging myself to the bathroom. I mean, I literally could not stand up for 9 days. Worst pain you could imagine, as neuropathy set into my legs and feet. And the other thing that really baffled them was none of this hit me until I dropped my blood sugar. When my blood sugar was up around 600, I didn't even have a symptom. So that was kind of odd also. But there was nights where I laid all night on the front room floor in just a fetal position. The pain in my legs and feet was so bad. My wife took our kids to my in-laws to stay the night so that they didn't have to see me. It was a really, really rough time. And one time I ended up going to the doctor the next day, and I told the doctor, I said, if you flag me as suicidal, I'll kick your butt, because I knew what that would mean. But I said, last night, because he was asking me on a scale of 1 to 10 how bad the pain was, and I said, last night, had I owned a chainsaw, I'd have cut my legs off. And he said, you're not kidding, are you? And I said, absolutely not. So they gave me pain pills and basically knocked me out for 3 days, let me sleep, and then took me right back off of them, and I had to start the whole cycle again until your body pushes all that glucose out. For about 2 months, I saw on May's post, I slept in a lawn chair in our bedroom, got about 45 minutes of sleep a night, because even if my feet were just level, the neuropathy, the needles and stuff would just start jabbing in my feet. So it was a hard time. Cindy Franklin, who was a friend that I went to high school with, I literally hadn't talked to her in probably 25 years. She saw some of my Facebook posts, and so she calls me, and she starts telling me about this plexus. And she has lupus and has been symptom-free on plexus for nearly 2 years. So she's telling me about this great plexus stuff. So the last part I'll tell you kind of about my problem areas was, I told her, I said, there's no way a natural product is going to work for me. Because for any of you that are familiar with pain medication, to get me through my neuropathy, and remember this is not even sleeping, I was only sleeping like 45 minutes a night, but just to get me through it, I was on 3,200 milligrams of gabapentin, which 1,800 milligrams is supposed to be the maximum dose. At the same time, simultaneously, I was on the maximum amount of dosage of Effexor as well as Vicodin. So, I mean, the neurologist was actually arguing in front of me to my doctor that I was on too much pain medication. Jumping ahead a little bit, after plexus, I'm on only gabapentin, and I'm down to 800 milligrams from 3,200, just because of plexus. So she starts telling me about that. I said, there's no way on the prescription meds that I'm on that an all-natural product is going to work. So I hung up on her. I mean, not like hung up, but I was like, I'm not interested. A couple days later, she calls me with her upline and brings reinforcements into the conversation. And I still said, no way. I mean, it wasn't that I was against it. It's just that I was on these potent prescriptions. What would some pink drink do? So I didn't get it. Well, they sent me a 30-day supply. So I start taking it because I have nothing to lose. And 8 days later, I'm up on my feet, walking around. I'm still not pain-free, but I'm up walking around, cooking, showering, doing all the normal stuff. So, as Omay's probably figuring out, I'm not the brightest person. So I thought, this is just the prescription meds finally kicking into my system. So what do? I stopped taking the Plexus. 2 days later, I'm right down on the couch again. So I'm like, wow, there's something to this stuff. And so I've been on it ever since, to make a long story short. I haven't missed a day of Slim. I'm on a couple other products. A little bit about the numbers, and as you see today, I'm walking, I'm biking, I'm playing basketball again. The only thing that has changed in my life is the addition of Plexus and the elimination of my other pain medication.
Wow.
So that's the only thing I've changed. I've changed my diet, other than cutting soda pop. So where was I going with that? So I take a couple of the products. I was going to some of my numbers. So after 7 months on Plexus, my A1C went from 13.4 to 6.7, which is, if you know about A1Cs, they want diabetics under 7. So I'm out of the insulin talk. I've been able to avoid insulin, I think, because of Plexus. You're going to think I was a walking time bomb, but I was. Let's see. It's hard to remember all of them. My cholesterol was 594. My cholesterol is now like 182 or something. I don't know. You have to check Facebook to make sure, but those are close numbers. When they ran your full blood panel, they tested me in 17 categories, all your vitamins, minerals, sodiums, all that stuff. I was either too high or too low in 12 of the 17 categories. After 7 months on Plexus, I was in normal range on every single category. So that's just a little bit. Now I take 5 products, and all I'm down to, and I don't mean to get real personal, but for you diabetics out there, I'm down to 800 milligrams of metformin a day. I don't eat trash, but I don't watch what I eat. So like last night we went out and I had Mexican food. I had a big burrito with shrimp in it and stuff. I can't remember the last time my blood sugar has been in the 190s. So this stuff works. If you're a guest, it really, 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 really works.